just people from here. It's come to a point now where enough is enough. We hatched this plan, a running exploratory road trip.
Wow, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा.
Because water was coming in the house, gunfire was erupting. No, never thought that it would come to this.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 March on Washington Film Festival. My name is Opal Hope Bennett, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's panel with the emerging filmmakers from our Student and Emerging Filmmaker Shorts competitions. This is our sixth year doing this program, and it is year after year a wonderful presentation of some of the best and brightest coming up in filmmaking. Before I introduce you to them, I need to introduce a word from our board member, Craig Emanuel.
Thank you, Opal. My name is Craig Emanuel, and I'm the chair of the Global Entertainment and Media Practice for the law firm of Paul Hastings, as well as being on the board of directors of the March on Washington Film Festival. For more than 35 years, I have worked as an entertainment lawyer, in large part representing writers, directors, actors, and producers in film and television. I've worked closely with filmmakers from all over the world in witnessing independent films start with the genesis of a great idea to the creation of a finished film to be seen on the silver screen or on my flat screen TV. I am thrilled and honored to be introducing this year's Filmmaker Finalist Roundtable. Film is not just a form of escapism, but has become a medium from which we, the audience, become educated in issues that might never be on our radar. The mission of the March on Washington Film Festival is exemplified by this competition, by their continued support of emerging and student filmmakers, and bringing to us films dealing with important issues concerning social justice. The dream of every filmmaker is to have their films seen and discussed, and we appreciate you, the audience, for helping today's finalist in fulfilling that dream. Thank you, and back to you, Opal.
Thank you, Craig. And now, without further ado, let me introduce the panelists joining us this afternoon. First, we have Kopika Ajay and Anik Laurent from To the Plate. Hi, ladies. Welcome. Next, we have, thank you. Next, we have Bilal Motley, Director of Midnight Oil.
Hi.
Hi, Bilal. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
And next, John Apple, Director of REST. Hi, John. Did I say your surname right? Is it Apple?
You know, you can say Apple or Appel, actually, both ways.
Appel. Let's say it properly. Appel. John Appel. Good to have you here. And finally, we have Dwayne Logan, Director of Blackbox.
Everyone.
Hi, Dwayne. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for everybody for joining us. So great to have you here, and congratulations on having your film selected to finalists in the competition. I'd love to have all of you go around and just share with us briefly what your film is about. Let's start with you, Anik and Kopika.
Anik, okay. So both of us graduated from Columbia Journalism School, August 2020, and we made our film entirely during the pandemic. And our film is To the Plate, and it's about it's a story of strength and resilience of Chinese community resisting Asian hate during the time of COVID. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Bilal, tell us a bit about yours.
Yes, my film Midnight Oil, it chronicles my 15 years at the oil refinery in South Philadelphia. It exploded in June 19th of 2019, and the effect that had on my coworkers that have been displaced and had to go around the country to find work. And also, but then it shows me finally meeting the fence line community that has long wanted this refinery not to be there. So I started to, you see the arc, you see my arc over this film, how I change and how it changes me. So yeah, that's basically it.
Brilliant. Let's move on to the narrative films. John, tell us about REST.
Yes, our film Rest is about an artificial rest product that is distributed to workers so that they can work longer shifts at their jobs. And the story takes place between a mother-daughter as the daughter kind of changes her worldview and starts adapting her mother's work, resisting artificial rest.
And finally, Dwayne with Blackbox.
My film, Black Thoughts, is it's an attempt to have a conversation with America in general, specifically those that have the belief that we live in a post-racial America. The idea behind the film is to offer what I refer to in the film as an opportunity to exchange eyes for viewers to step inside the heart and the mind, the soul of a human that is a Black man, and to hopefully humanize Black men and women and children in this country, and to best case scenario start some constructive dialogue around the persistence and the continued existence of racism in this country.
Yeah, that is a dialogue that needs to keep happening. So thank you for that. So a question that I had for each of you, and it's a little different, I think, in nonfiction versus fiction. So for the documentaries, please speak to how you came to your story, and then for the narrative, speak to how it was that you wanted to, cover the story that you did, either if it was a screenplay that you wrote yourself or that you discovered, why what you wanted to explore the story that you did. So yeah, let's start with you, Dwayne.
The I've been working in film for 11 years, and before that, I worked in the very affluent sport of gymnastics as a coach, and so growing up inner city Chicago on the south side of Chicago, having the dichotomy of those worlds of seeing the inner workings of what it means to be incredibly poor, and then existing in these circles of the country that are on the opposite side of that spectrum. Just the disconnect, being able to see the disconnect and the different interpretations of what's real versus what isn't when it comes to racism is always just kind of been a bit of a dripping water on my soul, and wanting to having lots of one-on-one conversations throughout the years, and constantly feeling like, hey, this is something that needs to be spoken about on a much wider scale. And I pinned 2 different films that I'd hoped to make years and years prior, and some setbacks and some delays didn't allow those to happen. And some of the things that happened that made national headlines just really exasperated like the level of urgency within me to do something about it and to start a conversation. Rakia Boyd and Botham Jean, and you just continue to see some of these lives taken, and you continue to see the effects of systemic racism in neighborhoods. I travel back to old places that I've lived, the south side of Chicago, Fort Heights, Illinois, and you look around and you see the despair, and then you hear the conversations that continue to deny that there are problems in existence. And then Ahmaud Arbery just shattered me. It just shattered me. And I went back to the production company that I was partnered with and just said, guys, I have to make something immediately. And we couldn't bring the other 2 pieces to life because of COVID restrictions and financial restrictions. And they gave me the opportunity to say, hey, take a week. I asked for a week to just write something that I knew we could shoot immediately and on a shoestring budget, and I pinned this film. And thankfully, it's been the conversation starter that I'd hoped and prayed for.
It's really powerful, talking directly to the events of the day that are affecting you. John, talk to us about Rest, and did you write the screenplay? How you came to the story, and why it was a story you wanted to share?
Yeah, so I started writing the screenplay in 2018. I was a graduate student at Temple University, completing my master's in film and working as a teaching assistant there. And I think the story really started as a way to try to defamiliarize elements of capitalism, being, and having friends and colleagues that kind of operate under a form of wage slavery, meaning that they often work 2 or 3 jobs. Sometimes, I have friends who work office jobs during the day, security at night, paying off, student loans and various bills, and still not making enough money to even support themselves, let alone a family if they wanted to have one. So that was kind of the inspiration for the concept of how could it be possible that so much of your time could be taken away from you doing, menial work, and still not, providing you with what you need for a fulfilling mental and physical lifestyle, right? So that led to kind of, a process of trying to figure out, how can we, turn this into kind of a light sci-fi script, and then we came up with the idea of rest, which was kind of inspired by the fact that when you're paid for work, you're paid, and we use our money so that we can, buy things and provide for our family things that are arguably, should be inalienable rights as humans, like shelter, food, rest, etc. So we came up with this idea of a product that is, kind of building off a kind of trying to build a critique of neoliberalism and the kind of good intentions of the people selling you this product that's actually exploiting you. And then we kind of created this, mini drama around a mother and daughter, having the main character's arc be her kind of worldview changing and coming into awareness and seeing her life and her world differently. So yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like having some social commentary presented in sci-fi form. Always very compelling, and yeah, appreciated what you did there. Let's move to Anik and Kopika.
So we actually came across our story through social media. Gopika had seen a post on Instagram about a couple of initiatives that our primary source, Moonland Sai, had been a part of through a restaurant called Competition. They were delivering and making meals for a couple of different people, different groups of people, like from healthcare workers. But outside of the restaurant, we had found out that she had actually been collaborating with her romantic partner to deliver, culturally appropriate food to senior citizens across the boroughs. And, we had just decided that was the most compelling and just really poignant like aspect of what she was doing at the moment. And fortunately we got to follow her along, both of them along, her and Yin.
And Gopika, did you want to add, or?
Yeah, I think everything Anik said, and I think the only thing that I would add is, as first time, so To the Plate is Anik's and mine, our thesis film, and it's also our first film. So as first time filmmakers, I think our biggest takeaway is how to make a film when we cannot actually go out and shoot.
Yeah.
And we went into a complete lockdown with no film and no footage, nothing. So that's been the process that's most challenging, but at the same time, I think that taught us the most in the process of filmmaking. Yeah.
Yeah, this was really great work for what you guys were dealing with in terms of production challenges. And finally, Bilal, please. I know you have a personal connection to this story. Of course, you're in the film, but yeah.
Yes.
And to being aware of it and to having deciding to chronicle it.
Yes. I come from artists. My dad's a painter. My mom was an artist, and I knew it was something that was always in me. So I was supposed to be this big track star at UConn, but and working at the refinery, making that great money, it just wasn't enough. There was still something burning inside of me. So in 2017, I did what no one does in refinery history. It's been there 150 years. I left. I went to go study filmmaking under TV showrunners in New York and California. But then I came back hat in hand. I just couldn't, really cut it back then because I was working on a pilot script on the refinery about, a TV pilot script about what goes on there. And my pilot ended with an explosion. So 2 years later, fast forward 2 years later, it actually happened. So I'm seeing my coworkers let go, the environmental impact, the fence line community, mostly Black and brown people that were affected. And I said, there's a story here. I need to do something. I was in the refinery. I was one of the last ones there out of like 1,000 people. I said, I have to do something. Let me start filming. Because for years I was waiting for permission to be allowed to make something as a screenwriter. You know what I mean? Like I said, you know what? I have an iPhone. So I got my iPhone and said, I'm just going to go for it, and then, and I just put my heart and soul into it. It's kind of embarrassing when people watch it because it's so personal. It's like my diary. It's really personal. And at the refinery, I was known as a Black refinery worker there. I was one of the only managers. So I kind of stayed low, kept my head down, because a lot of people were rooting for me, like, oh man, don't mess this up. You're one of the only brothers in there in management. So it was hard putting this film out, but I wanted a document so I can speak to my daughter, my son in the future, when climate change it's affecting us now, but it's really going to be affecting them. And I didn't want to pass the buck along. So that's why I made this film. So.
No, I appreciate that. Two points that what you said, not waiting for permission to tell stories that need to be told, and not passing the buck along when you see there's an issue that needs to be called out. All of you decided to apply to this festival whose thrust and focus is in the title of it, right? We all know what the March on Washington stands for. And you know that we pride ourselves on being a space for stories around issues of civil justice, civil rights and social justice. And I would love to hear from each of you more specifically what it is that your film, in your own words, how your film speaks to issues of civil rights, of social justice, and why it's really important to be having that conversation right now. I'm going to stay with you, Bilal.
Yes. I think it's very pertinent, especially to my story. The refinery, most people that work at the oil refinery in South Philadelphia or work there, they don't live in that community. Surrounding the refinery is like 100% Black and brown people. And for years, their concerns were ignored because because their income or whatever. But if this refinery was in one of the richer parts of Philadelphia, like Chestnut Hill or up on the main line, it would not be there. But for years, they were ignored. So I said, that's why I picked up my camera and said, I have to highlight their voices. And I received a lot of backlash, death threats from my coworkers, but I feel like their right to breathe is a basic human right. And I think that ties into, a lot of social justice issues, civil rights. Like if your health isn't okay, like if they're saying they have asthma and cancer is increased, we should believe them. We should ignore them just because the tax base might not be that strong where they live. So.
Thank you. Anik and Kopika, please speak to your film and how it speaks to issues of social justice right now and why it's important to be speaking about that now.
Yeah, in the film, Moonlin actually says that no one looks out for you as much as your own people will. And I think that sums up everything. And when we started this film, something that made us stand by this film and the story throughout is that sense of strength and resilience when everything around you is going berserk and you're starting to live a life that you never imagined you would live, and it's a pandemic. So as a community they came together, and when they started making meals for the elderly community in Chinatown, they actually started making the meals from their own pocket. Like they took money from their own pocket, and then they started this project. And then their friends just showed up, and then the friends just showed up. And then they really developed this community, which right now have hundreds and almost thousands of people working for this cause. So in about 5 months, 6 months, they gathered hundreds of people and they were really interested. And there are no monetary benefits here, nothing. It was just out of care and concern, for people around. So I think it's that sense of strength and community of staying together no matter what and looking out for each other during pandemic. So and it's one of the best things. I mean, I think they've taught us the most important chapter is that when the world goes crazy, you need to look out for each other no matter what. So yeah.
Anik, can you speak a bit to why it's important that we hear that now?
Sure. And to add to Gopika's point, this like To the Plate really is an example of how to do a lot with a little and eventually it growing. Because just like with storytelling, if you stay true to, what you're about, that's going to attract people who are like-minded and interested in the same cause that you are so drawn to or passionate about. And in terms of, our stories and why they're important right now, like every single one of these films, we're kind of in this moment where people had to sit with themselves. And for people who might not have been as much in tune or maybe had the privilege to not, pay attention or could, you know, not participate in certain dialogues, they're having moments of like grand revelations. But we have to continue to talk about, you know, pre-COVID era, exacerbation of, social disparities, but, also talk about what's happening now, just because history really is repeating itself. It's not going away, and documenting it, you know, from the documentary perspective or, through a character in the narrative perspective going through contemporary issues. It's important that people know that problems are persisting.
Appreciate that. John, please share your take.
Yeah, so I think, this film was meant to draw attention to one of the many ways that our society does not advocate and provide for the well-being of our people, whether it's healthcare or wages or working situations, etc. And I think we shot it in North Philadelphia because that's where we were based. But I think a story like this could really be made in any working class community in the U.S. And what was really interesting with this film is that the pandemic happened, very shortly after we completed production. So we shot it in the summer of 2019, and then COVID happened, and we saw a lot of these low-wage workers becoming the essential or frontline workers that we all rely on just to live. And we saw that it kind of exposed a lot of the themes that our film was trying to expose even more. So I think, it's just calling attention to the inequality that exists in our capitalist model and, basically trying to advocate for, workers who do some of the hardest jobs getting paid what they deserve, basically, yeah. So.
It's a really powerful message right now. And it's a good point that you make, Anik, and you follow up on, John, where this moment that we're going through, we've had brought into, sharp focus inequities. And for some, this is something they've been able to ignore. But for all of us, it's a moment of reckoning, and appreciate how you as artists are responding to it. Yeah, Dwayne, please share in your own words how Blackbox is really contributing to the conversation around civil rights and social justice and why it's important right now.
Yeah, and man, the opportunity to have the film as a part of this specific festival, I think, is just one of the most special moments in the life cycle of this film so far, and it encourages me so much to have it here. I think when the news cameras turn off and the attention to civil rights issues inevitably fades, as it always has, as it always does, there will still be men and women living in this country that are people of color that are being affected by very real issues that are all rooted in the way that this country was built, that are all rooted in the structure that holds this country up, and it's a unfortunately it's a reality that very few want to acknowledge. It's a reality that very few want to have a conversation about, and it's a reality that even those that do acknowledge want us all to move on from. Just get over it, keep going, keep mushing ahead. And so I just felt like I wanted to make something that when the crisis moment that is brought the national level attention fades, I wanted to create something that keeps the conversations going, that adds context to our realities. Instead of, I don't know, it's so difficult to look at the issues that really affect us all if there's not a real person attached to those issues. And so I wanted to put a face and a name and a heartbeat and a pulse on the Black and existence in America, on the existence of colored people in America, and what it is that they're experiencing from a contextual point of view that allows people to say, okay, hey, these are people that are experiencing some of these woes, and they're not things, they're not objects, and it's so much bigger and so much deeper and so much longer lasting than I think a lot would like to admit, and we'd like to ideally keep that dialogue very, very fresh.
No, absolutely. This is definitely something that was at the heart of a lot of the Black Lives Matter discussion, the specificity of anti-Black discrimination and anti-Black, just hurdles, social hurdles. And so a story that's keeping the conversation on humanizing Blackness, which feels like a crazy thing to have to say. But unfortunately, it is what often has to be said. So thank you for that discussion. I thank all of you for your films and for the conversations that you've brought up and the lights that you've shown on important stories and topics that will keep these issues in people's minds. It was a real pleasure to meet all of you virtually here, and it was a pleasure to have all of you in the audience who joined us to meet our filmmakers. Thank you so much. And now we're going to have a word from the producer of the March on Washington Filmmaker, Roderick Johnson.
Thank you so much, Opal, and thank you all for joining us for the Emerging Filmmaker Competition Finalist Roundtable. I'm Broderick Johnson, the producer of the March on Washington Film Festival, and we're thrilled you decided to join us today. Thank you so much, Opal Hope Bennett, for giving us access to filmmakers all around the world and to help shed light on the filmmakers' incredible work. To the filmmakers who joined us today, thank you so much for your hard work, and please keep in touch. We hope you've enjoyed our festival, whether in person or virtual. We've had an extraordinary few days with much more programming to come. This afternoon, we will hear from 19-year-old climate change activist Jerome Foster II for our How to Be a Citizen Journalist discussion. Jerome is a co-founder and editor of the digital news service Climate Reporter and is the youngest member of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Later this evening, we will honor the life and career of Fred Gray, civil rights attorney, strategist, and former member of the Alabama House of Representatives. Mr. Gray will be joined by Claudette Colvin, former U.S. Senator Doug Jones, historian Taylor Branch, and the 57th mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, Stephen Reed. This conversation will be moderated by a friend of the festival, Jamal Simmons, political analyst and television commentator. We encourage all to attend, and even if you don't have a pass, we'll make sure you do. One thing to remember is all of our films and panel discussions will be available until October 11th on Eventive, so please tune in. And lastly, make sure you reserve your tickets today at marchonwashingtonfilmfestival.org. Until next time, stay safe, stay green, and march on.